Welcome to the Putback. I'm Ian Begley with Chris Williamson, and we are so excited to debut our presenting sponsor today, Bet888. Bet $20 to get $88 using promo code SNY88. Chris, let's get to the baseline.
Yeah, Ian, recently a good friend of the show, Adrian Wojnarowski, reported that Victor Oladipo, Rockets guard, had turned down the Rockets contract extension. So what does this mean for the Knicks going forward? And is Oladipo pushing his way to the door in Houston?
Not necessarily, because Victor Oladipo wants a max contract. The Houston Rockets can still offer him a max contract and can offer him more money than any other suitor. So this doesn't really mean much as far as Oladipo's future in Houston. I think it tells you, as Woj pointed out in the story, that the Rockets will probably continue to listen to trade offers for Oladipo as we approach that March 25th trade deadline. And they can even sign and trade him in the offseason. So it's not like the Rockets under a time pressure here to get something done. And again, from a Knick perspective on Oladipo, I know there are people in the organization that see Oladipo as a really valuable addition to what they have now. I'm not sure how the top decision makers feel about Oladipo, but the Knicks would have to commit max money, close to max money, to get Oladipo to New York.
This week's guest is here to give out some awards for the Knicks season so far. Our good friend Dan Graca, SNY contributor and host of the Knicks pre- and post-game shows on ESPN Radio.
I think you got to go with Julius Randle, right? I mean, this is a guy that if he continues on this pace, and more importantly, if the Knicks continue to play at this pace, I don't see why he won't be getting some MVP votes league-wide when it's all said and done. I mean, I think that it's certainly realistic that he could find himself, at the very least, and maybe in the overall top 10 of MVPs around the National Basketball Association, because, when you think about the definition of MVP, it's not necessarily the best player. I think there's also a little bit of an element to it of, best player, but yet what you do for your team. And I don't think that there's anybody that's going to sit here and not acknowledge the fact that Julius Randle has been so important to this basketball team and lifted them to an area to where they haven't been in, let's be honest, a very long time.
There's no doubt, and I think Randle is certainly the most valuable player. Most valuable member of the organization for me in the first half is Tom Thibodeau. Nobody had the Knicks where they are right now. As of Monday, game over 500, fourth place in the East. Nobody did. And so the idea that he's got a lot of the same roster from last year, obviously there've been some changes, some different pieces, but a lot of the same roster, and Randle in particular, just playing extremely well, playing together, defending. To me, he's the most valuable member of this organization.
And Dan, what about most improved for this year right now?
Most improved, you could say Julius Randle, but, just for the sake of varying it up a little bit, let's go with RJ. Let's go with RJ Barrett. You wanted to see this guy take at least some steps in the right direction going into year number 2. I think you are seeing development and improvement in his game. First of all, he's shooting the ball a heck of a lot better. He's shooting it better from outside. Think about that corner three. He's like making a living down there this year. And that's what you wanted to see from this kid because, look, the NBA has become a perimeter game nowadays. The three ball has become so influential and such a big part of what this game is. And the other thing that we need to keep in perspective here with RJ, guys, is remember, he's only 20 years old. Like, the ceiling is not even close to being reached yet. Now, we don't know what that ceiling is. I still am very high on him, and I think that he's going to be a very, very good pro. But I think we have to keep all that in perspective. He's not going in the other direction. He is making strides in his game. So that's what's got to get you excited. And for my money, I think that's why he's probably the most improved player on this team.
Yeah, I think you go Barrett, but I also go Randle because Randle last year was just struggling in his role as the number one guy on this Knick team. And this year, amid all the trade speculation and the coaching change, he comes back, gets in the best shape of his career in his offseason, works a lot with Tyler Ralph on a shot, and he comes back, he's a different player. And he doesn't wilt under that New York criticism, that New York spotlight when things don't go well. I gave him so much credit for that alone and the idea that he's played so well and led this team and is an all-star.
Welcome to Ball Street, where the Knicks trend is your friend. And what I'm bringing to the table first up, Ian, is praise be to God Drew Hanlon, RJ Barrett's trainer, because he came on the show. And after 12 games this season, RJ Barrett was shooting a miserable 19% from three. And then something happened. I think Drew had something to do with it. Since January 15th, RJ is lighting up from downtown at 48%. And I'm bullish on him continuing this trend because this is something that Drew talked about. He told us how it's going to take some time for RJ to improve his mid-range game and also his three-point shooting. We're seeing the confidence. We're seeing him take it without any hesitation. We didn't see that early in the season. So I'm very bullish on RJ Barrett continuing to shoot lights out.
Yeah, it's a remarkable trend, Chris. And where I go today is Frank Ntilikina. Back in the rotation with Elfrid Payton out, in the backcourt, off the bench with Immanuel Quickley. He's played well. He's given the Knicks some good minutes. And I wonder if he's just being showcased for a trade here. And I think that it could go both ways, right? I think obviously if a team sees what Ntilikina does, likes him, and they have something that the Knicks want in a trade, I don't think the Knicks would hesitate to give up Ntilikina in a deal. That being said, I do know that there are people in that organization that still believe in Ntilikina's talent. They feel the main issue, though, is him being healthy and being hurt so often, not being on the court. With the way Tom Thibodeau talked about Elfrid Payton earlier in the year, I'm bearish on Frank Ntilikina staying in this rotation once they get Elfrid Payton back.
The next thing that I'm going to bring to the table is Immanuel Quickley. We talk about him so often and deservedly so. He has more 25-point games than any other rookie. Well, obviously coming off the bench this season, and he's played over 360 fewer minutes than both men trailing him in Anthony Edwards and LaMelo Ball. I'm bullish on the Knicks continuing to rely on him as that sixth man, somebody like a Lou Williams or a Jordan Clarkson, because this is what he thrives off. When he gets into that second unit, he runs the offense as well as anybody on that team, maybe a little bit less than Derrick Rose, but he's so fluid in the offense. He doesn't try to force anything. Even when his shot isn't falling, he's somebody who's going to be an impact player in any type of way.
Yeah, Chris Quickley continues to look like one of the steals of the draft, and I'm bringing Nerlens Noel to the table. Back when Mitch Robinson got hurt, somebody in touch with the Knicks said that they felt the Knicks really could go either way at the trade deadline, depending on how things went when Robinson was out. If the wheels fell off, they could be sellers at the deadline. If they stayed afloat, they could go ahead and pursue adding talent at the deadline. And because of Noel's play in part, they've been able to stay afloat. They've gone 6-2. Noel's been fantastic, defending the rim, blocking shots. He's obviously played a heavy workload, and I think that I am bullish on the idea that the Knicks can continue to ride Noel throughout the rest of the first half of this season, and then hopefully they can get Taj Gibson back. But I think they're comfortable with the idea of playing Noel big minutes throughout the rest of this first half.
How about the biggest surprise that somebody that you weren't expecting to have such a great year this year?
Oh, I mean, the first one that comes to mind, of course, is Quickley, because I don't think anybody did. You know, when they got him late in the first, I mean, when was the last time the Knicks had a steal in the draft? Right. I mean, think about it. Like, how far back do we have to go? Where, I mean, I guess you could say Mitchell Robinson to a certain degree. I know that it's still a small sample size because it's only been, 7, 8, 10 games or something. But Derrick Rose, I think Derrick Rose, him coming back, because I was a little bit leery when you started to hear rumors about, the Knicks are maybe going to bring Rose back here, because we know that his first tenure didn't work out very well. I mean, when you think Derrick Rose in a Knicks uniform, the first thing that pops to your mind is a guy who went AWOL. This isn't MVP Derrick Rose anymore. But I still think that he has been good enough for what they've asked of him to do. And he's now that veteran leader for this team. And I think the young guys have kind of followed in step and they're buying in to what he's provided.
I'm going Knick defense. I'm going bigger picture because nobody, again, had this team anywhere near the top 10 defensively, I think, coming into the season, because you looked at the individuals and you didn't see like lockdown defenders. Obviously, credit Tom Thibodeau and his staff for drilling these guys from day one on philosophy, on the importance of bringing it every day in practice and in games. You're seeing the results on the court, on the defensive end of the floor. That's Tom Thibodeau's calling card. It hasn't been the Knicks calling card for so long. You hear those defense chants in the Garden over the last 6 years or so, and you kind of laugh. But now they're legitimate, and you have to credit, Thibodeau and his staff for where they are on the defensive end.
The city identifies with a team like that. You think back to those 90s Knicks teams under Riley, defense, hardworking, blue collar. You come down to the paint, you're going to have to pay for it if you're the opposing team. And you already see this city all coming together around this basketball team. And I think that the style of play in which they employ goes a long way towards really getting everybody to buy in. And I think it's a great thing.
few days ago, I posted something on Twitter about Giannis Porzingis, and a lot of you had passionate responses to my take. I wanted to talk about a few of you who cared to comment on that tweet.
KJY fan said, Knicks fans to Ian Begley right now with a GIF that says, don't ever take sides with anyone against the family again.
Yeah, I love this one. I'm a big mafia movie guy, Godfather, Goodfellas, tremendous. One thing though, the only family that I have an allegiance to is my wife and my 2 kids, not the Knicks. My SNY family too. So I'm a reporter, I'm objective, but that got me to laugh. That was good.
And M1K3 said, Ian Begley, you could have shared your opinion on this topic without mentioning the Knicks. You've been one of the few good Knicks reporters. So I'm going to give you another chance before I hit unfollow for this dumb, emotional take.
I probably was a little emotional, but this man brings up a good point because I probably didn't have to bring the Knicks into it. My issue with this anonymous blind quote from this goofball agent was, if the Mavericks are going to trade Kristaps Porzingis, it's going to be based on basketball reasons. It's not going to be because of anything that Giannis Porzingis did. I did bring the Knicks into it because some people in the organization wanted to spin the story after the trade that Giannis was a headache, a diva, whatever. Again, if you're trading Kristaps Porzingis and you're the Knicks, the idea that Giannis Porzingis is a headache is not near the top of the list of your thinking as to why you're going to deal with him. Anyway, but he brings up a good point. I didn't have to bring the Knicks into it.
No, I hear you, man. And lastly, Romeo Anthony Cologne said, Ian, retweet this if you're tweeting this against your will.
That was also really good. No, Giannis Porzingis did not take over my Twitter account. I tweeted it of my own volition, typed it myself, sent it out myself. And again, you guys had some passionate responses, and I appreciate that. That's it for today's episode of The Putback, presented by Bet888. For Dan and Chris, I'm Ian. We'll see you next week, everybody.
So who do you think will be the Knicks MVP in the second half of the season? That's the subject of this week's SNY Fan Choice Poll presented by Bet888. Bet $20 and you get $88 using promo code SNY88.